Hello everyone, it's Joe here from Draft FPL, and today I'm bringing you a roundup of Game Week 9 from a Draft FPL perspective. I've got a few different topics today. We're looking at the North London Derby, the players with the highest expected goal involvement from this game week, some interesting talking points to note, and a look back at how my waiver picks got on. This is a new series I'm trialling, so if you enjoy this and want me to carry it on, hit the like button and let me know in the comments if there's anything else you'd want to see me add or take out from this series. Just so you know, I'm recording this halfway through the second half of the Monday night fixture, the Forest-Leicester game. So that game's data is not included in this, so it's the other 9 fixtures that I'm going to focus on this week. Okay, then the first segment I've dubbed the eye test. This is a game that I watched very closely, and I'm just going to talk through kind of some of the talking points, not really looking at any stats, nothing like that, just going through the game from a purely eye test perspective. So, first thing to note, I think the thing that everyone kind of took away is that Granit Xhaka is still playing in an advanced role, and he's been a revelation this season, to be honest, and he's actually been quite under the radar. Had a decent second half to last season as well, but in this number 8 role, he's finally found his place in the Arsenal setup, and he looks really good. And I will say, like, he actually is really quite attacking. I saw a stat today on Twitter that Granit Xhaka's had more touches in the opposition box this season than Heung-min Son, which I find quite crazy, really, when you think about their logical positions on the field. But Granit Xhaka's proven himself to be a great FPL draft pick, to be honest. Good fifth midfielder. I had him in a couple of leagues and dropped him when the fixtures got a bit tough, but I'm definitely going to look to start bringing him back in, especially after next week, the trip to Anfield. So, yeah, Granit Xhaka's like the main talking point for me. Also, and I don't want to rub it in too much, obviously I'm an Arsenal fan, it's a great result for us. But from a Spurs perspective, I wasn't too surprised, but when I saw the lineup, I did think that Conte would go for an extra midfielder to try and get some kind of control in the midfield. But he did go for the 3-4-3 instead, and opted to have the front three, which kind of it could have paid off, because there was a couple of times on the break where the three of them, if they'd linked up slightly better, they could have taken advantage a little bit more. But yeah, I was a bit surprised by that, to be honest. I expected to see a third central midfielder in there, how they finished out the Leicester game, with Son and Kane up top, just to try and get a little bit more control in the midfield. But I wonder if that's something we'll see more often in the future from Spurs, because they're really not controlling games at all with this 3-4-3 formation. They're just getting overrun in midfield, and they're kind of forced to then sit back and hit teams on the break, which does work for them quite well. But sometimes I think, especially in games where they're going to see more of the ball, that extra central midfielder might help them a bit more. And the final talking point, I think, really was the Saka form. He's really, it started the season, it was all Jesus and Martinelli, and then Odegaard came into it. But I think Saka is the one that's really bubbling away at the moment, and I think going forward from now to the World Cup, he would be the player I'd most like to invest in Draft FPL. So someone I'm definitely going to try and play a few trades for and see if I can get him in, because I think his value is only going to go up before the World Cup. And if you're in a league with very active trades, it could be a pretty decent kind of short-term flip. Get him in now and then trade him out again just before the World Cup. If England do well, he might need a bit of rest when he comes back, so it could be a good time to get off him when the World Cup comes around. Okay, next up we're going to look at the Game Week 9 expected goal involvement leaders. Obviously this doesn't include the Leicester Forest game, as I said at the start. So this is the expected goals plus expected assists from this week only. So basically, how many goals would these players have expected to score from the shots they took, and then the assists on that as well from any passes that led to shots. So Haaland top, there's no surprise really. Hat-trick and 2 assists is incredible. But I will say, a hat-trick from 1.1 XG, it's not unheard of, but it's not exactly It's not like he had 3 tap-ins. They were quite low XG goals. And, there's quite a few players on here with higher XG than him. Jesus, Callum Wilson, Martial. Obviously, Martial had a pen, so that skews it a little bit. This isn't non-penalty XG. This is total XG. Ollie Watkins with a blank had more XG than Haaland this week. I think he's just an absolute animal, isn't he? He does not stop. His finishing is unbelievable. He's in red hot form. Do I expect him to score 60 odd goals this season? No, I don't. But so he is going to slow down at some point. But not enough to trade him out if you own him. I think he's the absolute ultimate season keeper for now. But the 0.76 expected assist for Haaland is kind of surprising. It's not something we often see from him, but laying on those two big chances for Foden will make that happen. Yeah, so Jesus we expected to be up there. He had a couple of big chances. Callum Wilson against Fulham had 1.36 XG from one game, pretty high as well. Willock at number 4. Also in that Fulham game, you often see high expected goal involvement from a team when the other teams had an early red card, as Fulham did, so that's not too surprising. I will say Willock being the second highest Newcastle player is a little bit surprising. He does get forward from midfield, and that though I think he created a really big chance for Callum Wilson, didn't he? So that does prop up those numbers a little bit. Martial obviously scored a brace, got a pen, 1.27. That's not too unexpected. Ollie Watkins, 1.18 XG for him in the Leeds game. It's a good sign that returns might be just around the corner for Watkins. I know it's quite a frustrating blank. At home to Leeds, you expect at least a goal or two, especially as they went down to 10 men. It's quite disappointing there. Bernardo Silva and Foden next. As expected, really, 6-goal rout of United. Not too much to say there. And then number 9 and number 10, we've got some of the biggest scorers. Almiron, 2 goals from an XG of 1.04, and Trossard with a hat-trick from 0.87. Now, Trossard is a good finisher, but that is still incredibly high. I wouldn't expect him to be doing that every week. Maybe one goal would have been more repeatable from the chances he had, and Almiron similar as well. I mean, the volley Almiron scored was fantastic. So these things do happen. Obviously, the highest scorers of each week are always going to overperform their XG. It's just how it works. Interesting things to note. Some of the players we expect to be up there, and some players that might be a little bit overlooked this week. Couple of other things to note then. The Chelsea formation. I'm very, very interested in how Chelsea are lining up at the moment. I think whenever there's a new manager in, it's something to really pay keen attention to see if you can gain any kind of advantage. This week they lined up with a 4-2-2-2, so they went back to a back four. It was Chilwell at left back, Reece James at right back. No start for Koulibaly again. Obviously Cucurella was out injured. I think, and we know that Graham Potter lines his teams up in the best way possible for that match. So, you can't read too much into it. You can't say this is how they're going to play from now on, because it completely depends on the opponent. I assume this week they play Palace. The Palace fullbacks don't get forward. They play a tight midfield 3. So I'm assuming Potter was thinking they're not going to need too much width in defence, because they're not going to be overloads in wide areas. It's basically going to be the Chelsea fullback versus the Palace winger, so they don't need that extra cover wide. So if they play the 4-2-2-2, Havertz, Mount, Jorginho and Kovacic in a midfield box can kind of overload the midfield, and they don't need those players out wide. And then going forward, Sterling and Aubameyang can run the channels to create space for those midfield runners. I'm guessing that's how he saw it. That's kind of how it played out as well. But I don't think, this is a good thing that Chilwell started, but had they decided to play a back 5, I don't think Chilwell would have started. I think it probably would have been Sterling in that kind of hybrid left wing back role that we saw in the Champions League. And I don't think they'd played Chilwell at left centre back. It probably would have been Koulibaly. So yeah, I think Chilwell and had Cucurella been fit, would Chilwell have started at left back? we can say probably not. The relationship that Potter and Cucurella has, probably not. So it's a good sign that Chilwell's in his thinking, but I don't think it means that he's necessarily going to play going forward. Brighton, new manager, played really well at Liverpool. As we saw from the Trossard data, they did overperform on their XG in general, and Trossard did specifically. But they did, create a lot of chances. It was a kind of similar style to how Potter plays, but they were building up really deep in possession, Brighton were, and then when Liverpool were pressing, they were trying to spring and create their own sort of counter-attacks from their own possession, which is quite an interesting style. They created a lot of chances from it. I'm interested to see how they play against a team that don't press quite as high as Liverpool. So I'll be keeping an eye on Brighton, but the manager is known for being very attacking, very possession heavy. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for the likes of Gross, Trossard, etc. Danny Welbeck as well had a pretty good game and could have had a return or two. So yeah, Brighton, keep an eye on for sure. I don't think it's time to get rid of your Brighton assets. I think it's time to just sit and hold and wait. City in the derby, we spoke about it with Haaland. Absolutely next level. The performance was, especially in the first half, was just absolutely unbelievable. KDB, Haaland, Foden, all working so well together, and it was just absolute domination. I know Arsenal top of the league at the moment, but I'm going to enjoy that while it lasts because I can't see anyone stopping City at the moment this season. And any of those assets I just spoke about, the likes of Grealish, Bernardo Silva, KDB, these are the ones, Foden, these are the ones you want to own. I think Mahrez is on the outside looking in at the moment. If you do own him, I think you probably best bet is to just hold and wait and see what happens and hope that you can get into the team. But at the moment, I just don't see it because Mahrez always wants to cut inside and he creates sort of defences to get narrower. And it seems like City at the moment want to spread the defence to create more room for Haaland in the middle. A few defences emerged this week as well. It's another clean sheet for Bournemouth. Brentford kept a clean sheet for the first time in a long time. Another clean sheet for Villa. Leeds managed to keep hold of a clean sheet, despite going down to 10 men. So we are starting to see some of these teams that weren't doing so well defensively starting to kind of pull it in a little bit, play a bit tighter, and just try and nick goals. And Villa, especially, I think, are definitely in that category. I think the fact that the fullbacks are out injured, Dean and Cash are out injured, might mean that when they're back, maybe they'll be a bit more expansive. But I'm not convinced. I think Gerrard is kind of a disciple of Rafa Benitez, so it wouldn't surprise me to see them go defensive, for the time being. So I think their defence is a decent option at the moment. I think we kind of have to start looking at Bournemouth as well. It's weird to say because I wouldn't have expected it, but I think we do have to consider them as a defence that we can kind of look at when the fixtures are strong and they're just going to sit in and try and ride it out. So it might not be the worst shout, to be honest, with their great fixtures coming up. The game that I thought was a banker for a 0-0 was Saints-Everton. And at half-time it was looking great for that. And then, 3 goals in the space of 5 minutes just after the half-time break kind of ruined a lot of clean sheets in my Draft FPL teams. But I think those two defences are still pretty good and still teams that you can not rely on for a clean sheet because you can't really rely on anyone at the moment, but someone that you can look to when the fixture's good to see if you can sneak one in. Finally then, on to my waiver picks. I don't really want to do this. So for the season so far, I've been taking note of all my waiver picks. I've been marking them down, how I've been getting on. I say anything 4 points or above is a success. That basically means you got a return, maybe a booking as well if it is 4 points or off the bench. But I'd say 4 points counts as a success. Anything above that. So not a good week for me this week. Obviously we had Bella Kotchap and Tarkovsky in that aforementioned Saints-Everton game. Didn't go well. Kufau was the right team to target. West Ham kept a clean sheet, but Kufau was inexplicably benched. I actually myself, luckily in my league, Kufau was not available. I picked up Kera, which got me a 10-point return this week, so not too bad. But the official pick was Kufal, and I would have gone for him had he been available. I didn't expect him to not play. Fraser didn't get the start. I was quite surprised actually to see him bench for Murphy. Murphy's not really had that much of an impact for quite a while now, so that was a little bit surprising. I don't think it'll be too important really, because we expect St Max to be back next week. Tavernier with 3 points. He did okay, he had a decent game, but as I said, Bournemouth just seem to want to defend at the moment. I thought they might be able to get at Brentford, but to be honest, it didn't really seem like they even tried. They just tried to hit them on the break with knockdowns from Kiefer Moore onto Solanke. So, yeah, Tavernier is someone I'm going to be staying away from. I just don't think the attacking returns are really there. Wissa, after the waiver picks went live a couple of days later, I kind of went back on the fact that I thought Wissa was going to start and did kind of come around to the fact that I thought it might be Damsgaard instead, and it was. So Wissa did come off the bench and actually had a decent chance in the game as well. But yeah, a bit of a miss there, but what can you do? Ramsey with 3 points, blank as well in that game against Leeds, and he was close as well, but close doesn't cut it, so it's another blank there. And Daka obviously hasn't finished his game yet, but as it stands, he's on the bench. I was astounded that Vardy started, and Leicester 3-0 up at half time, so maybe Vardy's coming back into it. I still am just not convinced. I mean, the 3 goals they scored so far, I mean, I may eat my words and he might score a brace in the second half, but the 3 goals so far, Vardy wasn't really involved in any of them. He got slipped through one-on-one early in the game and put it straight at the keeper. I just think Daka's at the moment the better player, and I think he'll come back in, to be honest. So, yeah, not a good week for the waiver picks, but listen, we're gonna do these every week. It's good for me to have a bit of accountability, so I can't just sit back and hide. I'm going to put them up there, win, lose or draw, really. So the season average so far, 41% average with defenders, so pretty good. Just under 1 in 2 picks are getting normally a clean sheet is what they're getting. The odd assist in there as well. So yeah, 1 in 2 defenders just under are returning. 1 in 4 midfielders, 24% success on the mids, and just 8% on the forwards. That's to be expected. Forwards are really hard to pick. And also, I am trying to pick players that are available in 60-70% of leagues minimum. So quite often in your individual leagues, there are better players available than the ones I'm going for. But obviously, I can't cater that to every single league. So yeah, not the best week for me for my waiver picks, but we come back with game week 10 and we'll see how it goes from there. And that's all I've got for you. So if you enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button. As I said at the start, let me know in the comments if this is something you'd like to see every week, and let me know kind of if there's anything you'd add, take out, and stuff like that. Subscribe if you're new. Go down into the description for the Patreon link if you're interested in joining our Discord server. It's a lot of fun. And other than that, we will see you next time.